Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful idea that shapes so many modern countries: secularism. It's this concept that, affects how millions of us live together. So let's get right into what it actually means, and more importantly, why it matters so much. So, to really get why secularism is even a thing, we've got to start with this huge challenge that basically any modern multi-faith society faces. When you have so many different religious groups, so many cultures and values all trying to live together, well, the potential for conflict is, let's just say, pretty real. And that right there leads us to the big question, doesn't it? How on earth do you govern a society with so much diversity and do it fairly? How do you make sure that everyone's rights and freedoms are protected, no matter what they believe or don't believe, and still keep everyone together? This is the exact puzzle that secularism tries to solve. Okay, so let's get to the heart of it. A lot of people get this wrong. Secularism is not an attack on religion. Not at all. Think of it more as a political and social framework designed to manage that tricky relationship between religious belief and the power of the government. And here's the core idea. The word itself comes from the Latin saeculum, which kind of means of this world or worldly. And that's the whole point. Secularism wants to create a society where everyone is equal under the law, and where the state itself stays neutral on all matters of faith. The goal is to separate the business of the government from the business of religion. Oh, this is a great way to look at it. You can really break secularism down into three main pillars. First up, institutional separation. This means keeping the powerful institutions of religion separate from the institutions of the state. Next, freedom of belief. This is huge. It guarantees absolute freedom for everyone to believe whatever they want, and that also includes the freedom not to believe. And finally, state neutrality and equality. The state has to act like a neutral referee, treating every single citizen exactly the same, with absolutely no discrimination based on their religion. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't just some abstract idea that philosophers dreamed up. The principle of secularism was literally forged in the fire of historical conflict. It was born out of this long, hard struggle against the massive power that religious institutions used to have over politics. You can see the seeds being planted way back during the Age of Enlightenment, when thinkers started to champion reason over religious dogma. Then, that thinking just exploded into reality during the French Revolution in 1789. That wasn't just a fight against the king. It was also a direct challenge to the incredible power of the Catholic Church. And all of that history eventually led to huge moments like France's 1905 law that officially cut the ties between church and state. And guys like the philosopher John Locke, wow, they really lay the intellectual groundwork for this. His argument was basically about jurisdiction. He said, look, the state's job is to protect our rights here on earth. Our life, our liberty, our property. A church, on the other hand, is a voluntary group, and its focus is on the salvation of souls. In his mind, these two jobs are absolutely separate and distinct. They have their own lanes, and they need to stay in them. Okay, but here's a really, really important thing to get. Secularism is not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. Different countries have taken these basic principles and applied them in totally different ways, all shaped by their own unique histories and cultures. Let's take a look at three really different examples. This slide is fantastic because it lays out the variations so clearly. First up, you've got France, and its model called laïcité, which is a really strict separation. The goal there is to create a completely neutral public space by keeping religion almost entirely private. Now, the flip side is that its rules against religious symbols in schools can feel, to some people, like it's limiting their personal freedom. Then you jump over to the United States, which talks about a wall of separation. The U.S. Constitution does two things. It stops the government from creating a state religion, but it also fiercely protects every person's right to freely practice their own faith. This, of course, leads to endless court battles over just how high that wall should be. And finally, you have India, which does something totally different with its idea of principled distance. It's way more flexible. The state can actually step into religious matters, but only for specific reasons, like promoting social reform or making sure different religious communities are treated equally, which, as you can imagine, can get pretty controversial. And all of that brings us right up to today. Because, secularism isn't some solved problem. It's a constant negotiation. That delicate balance between protecting religious freedom and keeping the state neutral is always being tested by new social and political challenges. I mean, just look at the headlines, right? These debates are happening everywhere. What role should religious symbols have in our public schools or government buildings? What do we do when secular laws clash with the traditions of religious minority groups? And just how much influence should religious arguments have in politics? These are not easy questions, and they show that secularism is this living, breathing, constantly evolving principle. You know, one of the best ways to understand what something is to look at what it's not. And the opposite of secularism is basically a theocracy. In a secular state, the government's power is totally separate from religion. It strives to be a neutral player. In a theocracy, though, political power comes directly from religious leaders or religious law. One specific religion runs the whole show. Seeing them side by side like this really makes it clear what's at stake. So this leaves us with this one massive question that really gets to the very core of this whole thing. In a world with so many different beliefs, where exactly do you draw the perfect line between freedom of religion and freedom from religion? Finding that incredibly delicate balance, protecting one person's right to believe while also protecting another person's right to be free from a state-sponsored religion, that is the central, ongoing project of every secular society in the world today.